Hello, everyone. As we're winding down for spring break, I wanted to talk a little bit about feedback. Several people ask about how do I give feedback, and you probably already figured out that I'm not the kind of teacher that just goes through everything you write and marks mistakes or gives you comments about what is wrong. I would say the kind of feedback I give fits more under the global response is you generally what I call it. I know in some of the readings you've been looking at, they call it a couple of different things. But that doesn't mean I don't give individual feedback. I'm a true believer in working with writers and giving feedback, whether it be feedback on the actual content in the writing or when you get to the editing phase, the final cleaning things up at the end. And I truly believe that the writer should be ready for that and should that's one of the things that an advanced writer has practiced and has an awareness of, how to get feedback, when to get feedback, how to edit, when to edit, and how to use those things and work them into your writing process. Now I pulled up this Google Doc that you guys have already looked at. This is back to the reflection work that you did, and I wanted to kind of focus on the writing you did for that to show you and kind of a way to think about giving feedback. So as we continue to go through and think about writing, what writers do, what are ways we can give writers feedback, continue to try to think about what choices do writers make, or you could think moves if you want to use a little bit more of a kind of sounds more jazzy term. What choices or writers do moves do writers make? And the reason I don't do that individual just go through and mark things so that students can fix their writing. I notice I didn't say writers because that's not how I would work with writers, but students expect that that's what teachers are going to do. But the reason I don't do that is because if I do all of that, then basically I'm doing that work and not giving writers the opportunity to practice that in part of what they do in their writing process. I added a couple of things on here that I'm going to focus on a little bit more today. Request feedback. When do you request feedback and who do you request feedback from? Utilize feedback. How do you use feedback? When and how? You don't necessarily want to use all the feedback that you get. Some of it's not going to really apply to what you're doing, but some of that will fall on your responsibility as a writer. And one of the reasons I really value practicing this reflection writing is that you learn to think about what you are trying to do, what you feel like you have done, what you feel like you haven't done, where you need help with stuff. And the more specific you can be and the more clear you can be when you ask for feedback, then that will just ensure more that you will get useful feedback because you'll be helping the readers who are giving you feedback to give you better feedback. And then editing the same way. When do you edit and according to what standards? All editing does not have all the same requirements. Now, we're not going to talk about editing here because the writing we're doing here, we're still, working on low stakes. This is the first time we've done reflection writing. It's not easy. It's a hard thinking activity. You have to kind of heat your brain up and use a little bit more than you may want to at times. And it takes, practice, as Giles talks about in her article. Okay, now I picked. So what I do most of the time is I will take work that you guys have done, and I will pick some to use and give some feedback on, and then the rest of you can take that feedback and use that to help you think about what you need to do in your specific writing that you are doing. So that way you get to practice that. Okay, so the first thing I would recommend is look at the example that you have. And this example that I chose, and I just chose it random, and pretty much overall what I saw from the reflection that you guys wrote looked pretty good, especially for a first draft. Generally what I see on the first draft or the first try is writers are talking more about the content and not so much about why they did what they did. But that's pretty normal because that's not something you do a lot. It's probably a new thing. And you'll find that you really are doing these things. You've kind of internalized them. And reflection is a way to kind of pull that out and make it more obvious. Bring that out so that you're more aware of it. Not to say that you don't do any of the things or that you have all these bad processes. It's not about that, but it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Are they the best strategies for you to use? What other strategies could you use? So just a way to, kind of expand your thinking. Okay, so one of the first things is to look at the example. Dear reader, now in this first paragraph, the writer basically does give a little bit of the context. What is the, in this case, it was an essay. What is the essay about? And they give that information. And then my main strategy in this essay is to describe how the rules have affected me personally. So as the reader leaves the first paragraph, they know what is the main thing that the writer was trying to do in this essay. Then they talk about specifically what they did free writing. Why? To get my feelings out on paper, but that wasn't effective because, notice they tell why. Why was not that effective. So went with an outline. Having trouble with the introduction. Why? You see the becauses in here? I did this, it worked because. I did this, it didn't work because. I mean, you could use those sentence beginners as you write your reflection. That could be how you start your sentences. I want to hook the reader's interest, but I don't know how to do that. In reflecting, this is something the writer was trying to do. Here's something else the writer was trying to do. What was I trying to do? I was trying to blah, blah, blah. There's another way you can start sentences in reflection. Okay, then go on to, I did not include comments. Generally, the third paragraph is about feedback, and you guys really didn't ask for feedback on the response. I called it a response. I don't really think it was an essay where you were reflecting on the work where you talked about ways to give feedback. And we really didn't give feedback on that. But in the third paragraph, you could still talk about strategy. You can see here, that's my main strategy. I don't want the paper to be too long and bore the reader. This is a why. Why did you do what you did? Not just what did you do, but why did you do that? Okay, so having kind of reviewed that, let's quickly, I'll run through here. Now, like I said, this is an example I just picked. It's a good one. It's not that I was like, oh my gosh, this one needs lots of work. Actually, there's some pretty good stuff in this. Like I said, for first time, I'm assuming for most of you, it's the first time you've gotten into much of this reflection writing. Okay, dear reader, in Module 1, Lesson 3, I wrote about, and see, that's good. They gave a context. I wrote about different types of feedback. And actually, as a reader, you could say, for my class on teaching writing, I wrote about different types of feedback. See how that would be more specific to the reader. I mean, we know in this case we're talking to each other. Our class is kind of like our readers for this part, but anytime you can be specific that way, it's it's always gonna you're always gonna make sure that your reader has the context. So this isn't really wrong, but that's a way to think about maybe being more specific. What did they do? They wrote about different types of feedback to help them improve on any. Now I marked any in green. I don't know if you've been taught this in test taking situations. It's a common strategy they teach when you're doing a standardized test. You want to stay away from what they call absolutes. Absolutes are things that are like 100%. Something is true all of the time. This happens every time. It's always the case. Words like that, you just want to avoid them because very few things in life are 100%. So I wanted to be feedback that could be given to a writer to help them improve their writing projects. So you could just say something like that. I reference many things. Now, many things. Think about how does that help the reader? What does that help the reader? Things is a very generic word and doesn't really give the reader any kind of specific information. So are you referencing, in this case, after you read the rest of, what's here, this person referenced 3 articles, I think. Yeah. So here, the writer could say, I referenced 3 different articles in my discussion to cover ways to help writers or something like that. Okay, like an article, it's kind of a slangy, more conversational way to write. So when we think about, remember one of the things we'll talk about is those tests you have to take, take to get certified. You'd want to stay away from this kind of thing. Written by Paige Tuitt, titled Teaching blah blah blah. Very good job of giving the name of the author and the full title. Because, now see, there's a because, so that's good. Because I feel like she hit the nail on the head. Okay. Hit the nail on the head. It's a colloquial phrase, but really doesn't provide the reader with any specific information. And what do you mean? What does the writer mean by hit the nail on the head? Hit the nail on the head could cause somebody to have a concussion or make somebody bleed. It could be a bad thing. It could be a good thing. So it's just not going to give the reader any information. Let's see. One thing I knew I had to include was when she talked about vague feedback. Okay, that's specific as to what the writer did. I like that because try to stay away from like. The things that you like are okay and good, but most people are not really wanting to hear what you like. They're wanting to hear about the specifics. Why is this useful? How is it useful? So instead of saying, I like that, or say, this strategy, or the strategies I think it's Tuitt. I don't remember the name of the author, but most strategies the author used help when feedback is, or talk about when feedback is vague and it does not provide any help to the writer, and in the end probably just ends up confusing them. Now, if we know that feedback is vague, as readers, we really kind of already know that the rest of this stuff. So think about making the most use out of the words and the space that you have. So, this article one of the things that this writer pulled out was the idea that vague feedback is not useful, period. Then you don't have to say all of this. I put that in there because it was a great way to start it out. Now there's a because, but the explanation is not that specific. a great way to start it out? Does that mean the discussion? The response that the writer wrote? Does that mean the part about this article? And here again, why is it a great way to start it out? Why? Why did the writer think that? Why did the writer put that in there thinking about the reader? Another thing that was added, there kind of shifts here. Another thing I included, see, don't shift. The writer's doing I, which is fine. Another thing I included was promoting deep engagement because I agree with it on all facets. But here again, how do you agree with it? Why? Why do you agree with it? Why did you put it in there? You're saying you put it in there, but for reflection, when you think about reflection writing, that's just talking about the content. That's not talking about why. Why did you as a writer decide to put it in there? So instead of saying you might say a writer needs deep engagement if they want to eventually be successful. Now, that's a pretty general statement. So why? And what does that have to do with writing this response? Because remember, in the reflection, you're talking about why you did what you did. You're not explaining in this reflection what good strategies are. Okay. Let's see. Where was this one? Oh, that one's down there. Okay. Let's see. Okay. When I was writing the next part, now the reader hasn't told us about parts. So what parts? So I put over here explain parts. Was the discussion of paragraph section, and then next paragraph was on Iberia's article. So, did this writer just do like 3 paragraphs, 1 paragraph on each different article or reading? And a lot of people did that, but if you go back to the decisions, reorganize content. I should say organize and reorganize content. As a writer, you're making decisions on what you're going to include, where you're going to include it, and why. Now, so, I'm guessing this writer did it that way. One article, talk about one article, second article, and in the next paragraph, third article. Would that be the best way to present the information to the reader? Maybe not. There are different ways to organize the information. So is that the best way? Probably the thinking most people had when they were doing this assignment was kind of that teacher thinking. Teacher says I have to cover blah, 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 blah. How can I get the information in there? Blah, 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 blah. But for this, again, any of the writing we do, I want you to think about you as a writer. Why are you doing this? I'm not the audience. The audience is, you're talking to people about what you know about writing and writing strategies. Okay, when I was writing the next part that talked about, so here we have another article. I was thinking about using this certain part that talked about focus and variety. Here again, you like it. So leave out liking. What was she talking about? But I feel as it tied really well to what the first article was talking about. Okay. Good reflection on what you're trying to do, but how does it tie in? So the writer has told us that the writer is seeing connections. I put this in there here because I saw a connection, but what was that connection? And when you think about how you're putting your response together, another way to organize the information might be not to just do it each individual reading separately, but to maybe take those connections. Talk about the connections. Not only I wrote about this because there was a good connection between the articles, which furthered the point that I was trying to get across about feedback. Okay. As a reader, we don't know what that is. So, but it's good that the writer is telling us that they're trying to make this connection. That's very good reflection. But just be more specific. You know, I was trying to get across about feedback needs to be blah blah blah, or feedback, you know, something specific, or the point that Tuit said about blah blah blah. So be more specific there. And then the writer starts to do more of that. I really wanted to show, and this is very good reflection, how others agreed on the same topic. So the writer wants to show that this first author and this second author had agreement. A good stepping point. That's very generic. That really doesn't tell the reader a good stepping point for feedback. Do you mean, does the writer mean maybe when you do feedback with writers in your classes, would this be a good strategy to start with? Anyway, this is kind of a general statement here. I broke down the last article, the third article. The writer doesn't tell us the name of that article, which really, if the writer could have put all three up here and then just referenced them as they went along by using the last name. That would be a way to be more specific and help the reader follow through on the information. Okay, I tried my best to hone in on. Let's see. How did you hone in? And why? Why did you feel like you needed to hone in? You did that for some reason to get the information across to the reader. Why did you choose that way to hone in? There are many ways to do that. And did you choose the best one? Because one of the reasons we do reflection is to see, did I do it the best way? Or is there a better way to do something? You know, you might even have done it a way that works, but maybe you see a better way when you think about it from through doing reflection. That goal being to improve writing projects. And I ask here, so did you start with this goal when you started writing? And how did writing about each article separately act as a good choice to allow you to do this? Was that the best choice? Again, one of the things the writer did was separate the three articles. Was that the best choice? In reflecting, why did you do that? Did you see the goal before you started writing, or did you see it after the writing? You know, sometimes when we start our initial writing, our trying to get our thoughts down, the first draft or whatever, however you want to think about it, we'll see the connections more as we get into it, or after we have done most of the writing. That's not a bad thing. That's part of the process. So that would be part of reflection that you could talk about. They, here again, who is they? Writers need to have good feedback that gives them the path to success in writing. That doesn't tell the readers anything. I put here, how in the heck do you make this happen? But was that your goal? Was the goal to improve writing projects, or was the goal to have success in writing? Or is it just something to say that sounds good at the end? You know, that's a lot of we've been taught, you know. Oh, let's just put in something kind of flowery and generic to finish it off. And then the last sentence, I put kind of an abrupt ending. It seems like the writer probably was like, okay, not sure what else to say, I'm finished. But not just some feedback that will have them confused. but again, as a reader. So you can see there's a lot of thinking going on here. The reflections, there's some good reflection in here. There could be more. And then the actual helping the reader as they move through and write. You can see things that the writer could do to help the reader. So as you see what this writer has done, go back and look at what you did. And if you want to, because I pretty much gave full credit to everybody, because if you did the assignment, because like I said, I see this is low stakes because this is our first go round at it. But if you'd like to give it another try, because we'll talk more about reflection, and I think we've got more reflection in the schedule. If you want to do, go through and give your reflection that you wrote another try and make some changes on it, I'll give you extra credit for that. And you would just turn it in the same discussion forum. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to label it anyway or send up any flags or anything. I'll see that you posted it there. So just put it in the same place. If you want to leave a note when you post it, that's fine. But you don't have to do anything extra to make sure that I see it. So anyway, I hope that this is useful and helpful. And like I said, most of what I saw looked pretty good. So you guys keep doing the good hard thinking.